7th through 8th grade. I'm looking forward to today's topic. The topic today is about organizing your research and asking good questions. This is the meat of your paper. This is what you spend the most time on, and you've already been working on this. But I want to talk through how this kind of develops and morphs into a paper, what the process looks like. And I'm going to use examples from a couple of my students. So one student chose the general area of the Gulf of Mexico, the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. And she doesn't have a thesis, doesn't have an opinion, because of course, good research doesn't start with a thesis. That would be biased. Good research starts with an area of interest. So, in this area of interest, she starts reading. Now, one of the things that she and I discussed, and this is also, I should, as an aside, say that this is the time in your paper writing that it is good to interact with other people, to collaborate, to discuss your ideas, to listen to their questions and their points that they make. It's a good time, if you're in a college setting, to go to your professor. Talk through some of the research you found that you've read. Your goal is to become an expert in this area, your research paper, that you read so widely that if someone you're discussing with has a question, you've already found the answer. But it also helps you to figure out, to see the perspective of someone else and to figure out if there's something you've missed. So she and I were discussing her topic, and we talked about the importance of looking at the history of naming geographical locations or national landmarks. So she did. She went and she read about the history of it. She found in her reading that the Gulf of Mexico was named in the late 1500s. That was pretty significant information to know. And so that helped give some context to the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. So she looked into when was it last named. She also did some research on finding out how common is it for a president to name or rename a national landmark. Turns out it's pretty common. In fact, the last several presidents have collectively renamed somewhere around 60 monuments. It's pretty crazy. So that's actually a pretty common thing, to name or rename a national landmark. Then she looked into, she's also reading about the political climate, the ongoing climate, the purpose behind renaming the Gulf of Mexico, and then if she finds out the purpose, whether or not it is effective. Will renaming the Gulf of Mexico accomplish its purpose? Is it an effective use of a president's time? What is the desired effect? And in that, she especially is going to look at both sides. So it's important to read not just the information that supports your perspective, but the other side. So if the president is going for a certain effect by renaming the Gulf of Mexico, is he undercutting himself? Is he making his role and his goals, is he making light of these things, or is the desired effect accomplished? Is he inspiring patriotism? Is he establishing his authority? So as you ask these questions, you go and find the answers. And this is how you take notes. So you write your question down and you answer your question. In your note cards where you're keeping quotations or summarizing paragraphs or whole articles, then you can categorize these note cards under the questions you're asking. Or you can also have a chart where you have a pro and a con chart. So you start to see two sides to this, and you start to form an opinion. Is renaming the Gulf of Mexico a good idea? Or do you think renaming the Gulf of Mexico is a bad idea? And why? So you're looking at both sides of these things before you form your opinion. Once you have gathered your information, you look at it and you say, what has the most support? What position has the most support? Which position do I agree with the most? And then that is where you start to filter down your information and to form your thesis. So then your thesis becomes, in her case, it's going to be something along the lines of renaming the Gulf of Mexico inspires a nation. And then she's going to talk about how it does that. Or renaming the Gulf of Mexico undercuts the president's goals. Or renaming the Gulf of Mexico benefits Americans. Or renaming the Gulf of Mexico hurts Americans. So you see, you can fashion it in different ways depending on how your support is going to flesh out. Let's move on to the next example, Trump's assassination attempt. So my student here started asking questions. We also had a discussion about this. So one of the first things you do in any topic is you think about the history of this. What in history affects this topic? So you look at the stream of history, and there are several areas you could look at. You could look at other assassination attempts. You could look and find out which ones survived and which ones didn't. You might be surprised to know that this student found out that there were 4 successful presidential assassinations. That means 4 presidents have died from assassination. 3 attempts where the presidents survived, they were shot and survived. 3 where they were shot and were not harmed. And then, if I remember correctly, 3 to 5 where they were not harmed, but other people were. So it's quite interesting. Then he actually found in his research that one of the assassination attempts that ended similarly to Trump's had a lot of, as he compared them, they had a lot of similarities. And the President Roosevelt was shot right before a public speech, similar to Trump. It was on the campaign trail, similar to Trump. And contrasting to Trump, he was shot at close range, and he was shot in the chest, unlike Trump. And it was a glasses case and a very thick set of papers that contained his speech that helped to block the bullet from proceeding into any dangerous organs. And so it stopped the bullet. He pulled out his speech. He announced he had been shot, and he continued with his speech, and he wasn't treated until quite a bit later. So it was very interesting to see the similarities and the differences. And so then the question is raised, well, what kind of political climate was this other president in at the time? How does it compare to Trump's political climate? What party was he part of? And what was the after effect of this president's brave response to the assassination attempt? So even just in looking in the history of our country, he found the potential for a very specific paper topic. So this student is considering possibly doing a comparison paper between Trump's assassination and President Roosevelt's assassination attempt, the assassination attempts of these 2 presidents, setting them side by side and doing a comparison and a contrast, and then concluding with what effect it had on the nation. Another possibility, though, is to use all of the history of this to examine the causes, and the effects of assassination attempts, and to examine closely motives and provide kind of an analysis for the opportunity to avoid these kinds of attempts in the future. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, but he could say his thesis, as he's doing his research and asking these questions, could be Trump's assassination attempt could have been avoided, or Trump's assassination attempt inspired the country, or Trump's response to the assassination attempt secured his victory. However, whatever angle he takes, all of his reading, all of his research will come into play because, again, the goal is to become an expert in this topic. You look at the history, you look at the current conversation, articles that are written on both sides of this. What caused it? Did he provoke an assassination attempt, etc.? So normally there are at least two sides to a topic. And so both of these students are honing in on their thesis. Now, the difficult thing about this topic is, how do I assign your homework? Because really, the big assignment is still to come and you're in progress. But we do want to use each week as kind of a measuring stick and to see how far we've come in our paper writing process. So what I'd like for you to do this week for your homework is to turn in a refined works cited page. Now, on this works cited page, I really want you to have 7 to 10 different resources. Now remember, as you're reading on all of these on your topic, we're not just Googling things. I'd like you to either use Google Scholar. I'd like you to go to the library. You can, most libraries, especially university libraries, have academic databases that you can access. This is really good information. This kind of information is better than just the stuff that you'll Google. However, if you're doing a topic that has a current cultural element, then it is important to read current articles, current meaning stuff that has come out in the last even few weeks, few months, and to hear the conversation that's going on about this topic. So read both sides of the topic. Don't just read the one side. I'd also like you to share at least 20 notes or quotations with your teacher, professor, parent. You can do this by turning in 20 note cards with these things on them, or if you're keeping it in a file, you can share your file with it. The formatting of this is not important. So this doesn't follow MLA formatting. It can be a little bit informal, but if you look back at my earlier video, it does need to generally resemble, you need to have cite the work that you use for this note card. Tell me exactly where to find it, page number or paragraph or website, and then give it a general heading and then present your information on that note card. Or again, if you're doing it in a document, have some way of labeling these with these 3 elements. And then I would like you to have a thesis statement by class next week. It doesn't mean that this thesis statement won't be refined or tweaked. It does mean that at this point in your research, you should have a good idea about the side that you're choosing to be on and the general conclusion you're coming to. So it's a statement that you have reduced down the information and you are choosing a side. If you are a little fuzzy on how to write a good thesis statement, you can look back at my videos. I have one that talks specifically about how to write a good thesis statement, how to word it. But quick refresher, the subject of your thesis should be the subject of your paper. No, there is sentences for a thesis statement. It is the entire point of your paper. And it's a statement that it might reflect your opinion, but you should not be present in this sentence. No, I think, or I want, or my perspective. No personal pronouns, no first or second person pronouns, okay? So you should know this as well if you have watched my videos on writing a good thesis. This is also a good time to say, so let me give, for the parents, let me tell you how to weight this. For a works cited page, I would do 5 points per resource, okay? You're going to be editing this all over because there probably will be punctuation, capitalization errors, might not be alphabetized or out of order, formatting errors. So this is a big one. You don't count off for those. You just give them 5 points per resource, and then you edit it. And then when they turn in a more refined one, they have to address each of your edits for 100%. So if they simply do it and they do it mostly correctly to the best of their ability, they can get 5 points. And then share at least 20 notes or quotations. You can weight this more than I'm going to tell you to, but I would give them, this would be a big 60-point assignment. I would give them 3 points per note or quotation. And then have a thesis statement. That is a big, just by itself, that is 10 points. So total, you're looking at somewhere between, if you want to separate these out and have them be separate assignments, which I do recommend, you're looking at a 50-point assignment, 35 to 50 points, a 60-point assignment, and a 10-point assignment. Okay, so students and parents, this is a good time to say, if you have never produced an essay, a funnel method essay, this would be a good time to go back and look at some videos I've created for the 5th and 6th grade class. This is fundamental to writing. We still work on this even in college. We teach this to freshman writing students. So it's not a bad idea to go back and just refresh yourself on this topic. So feel free to do that now, and just make sure you're ready to go forward with we're going to be talking about the outline soon and supporting our thesis with the quotations and other support.